Hi everyone, in this week's video I'm going to talk about the best wood types to use in your outdoor wood project and what the best finish to use is to make those projects last a long time. My name is Nick Paicos. My shop and channel is the Paicos Aesthetic. I've been woodworking for over 10 years, guys. Successful part-time business, and I've created projects like these for family, friends, and clients. Stick around to the end of this video to hear a secret bonus tip that's going to help make your wood furniture last even longer in your outside project. Hi everyone and welcome. So today's video, like I stated before, we're going to talk about the best wood types to use for your project and what finish to use to make them last for a long time. When it comes to selecting the best wood type for your outdoor project, there are several things that you want to think about. Are you going to be painting your project, or are you going to be applying a stain or a clear finish? Are you most concerned with the longevity of the project or the appearance, or a combination of both? Do you have other outside furniture that you want to match to this project? What's your budget? How much money are you willing to spend? What is your project and what are you using the wood for? So first up, we're going to talk about pressure treated lumber. So pressure treated lumber is lumber that's treated with pressure and chemicals, and it makes the wood last a very long time. You've probably seen this in the big box stores before. It's the lumber in the way back that's got kind of the greenish, bluish tint to it. If you're going to be painting your project, this is a really good choice. If you're going to be applying stain, if you want stain or a clear finish applied to your project, this is a terrible choice because the wood looks horrible. So keep that in mind. It's commonly used for structural applications like decks, things like that, but they're always painted. Definitely not a wood you want to get if you're looking to apply a stain or a clear finish. So if you're working on a project that you know you're not going to paint, you want a decent looking wood, you want a wood that's going to last, I'm going to give you a bunch of choices in ascending order from price. The first option is going to be Douglas fir. So Douglas fir is going to be available at the big box stores, and I'm talking about my region. I'm in the Northeast. Where these woods are available is going to be dependent on where you are in the country, and I'll mention that when I talk about the woods. So Douglas fir, think Northeast in the big box stores. This is a softwood. It's resistant to rot. It's a little bit more vulnerable to insects than some of the other ones in this list. In my opinion, it's a very boring wood. It has boring grain characteristics. If you're going to be applying a clear finish, this is not the wood you want to use. That's just my personal opinion, but that's one choice. It's fairly cheap. A second option is cypress. So if you're in the South, this is the wood that you're probably going to see in your big box stores. That's most widely available. It's a tree that's found in swamps in the South. It's also a softwood. It's more, Douglas fir is a little bit more reddish. Cypress is a little bit more of a whitish wood. Great insect and rot resistance. It's considered to be a stable wood. Like I said, it's widely available in the South. The price is on the cheaper side. This wood tends to be boring in my opinion as well. The grain characteristics aren't all that interesting, but it's a good choice if you're looking for something cheap. Next up is Western red cedar. So this is a next step up in price category. Western red cedar is widely available in the West, like it says. This is a softwood as well. Great insect and rot resistance. Also considered a stable wood. And this wood is where you start to get into the woods that are really aesthetically pleasing. This is a really pretty wood. You can apply a clear finish onto this wood and it just looks beautiful. You don't need to worry about staining it first. So that's a very good choice. Commonly used for projects like pergolas and things like that. Next up is sapele. Actually, I'm not sure off the top of my head if it's sapele or sapele. I should probably find that out. But anyway, I'm gonna go with sapele. This is a hardwood. It's the first of the hardwoods on the list. Great insect and rot resistance. The grain characteristics on this are really, really pretty. It's a cousin of mahogany. And this is my personal preference. This is my go-to outside wood of choice. I've done several projects on the outside of my house. The sliding barn doors on our shed, the pillar wraps on our front porch, and now this pergola project that I'm talking about today is all using sapele wood. And I just love it. So your next wood is teak, and this is where you're bumping up another level when it comes to price. Teak is considered the gold standard for rot resistance. If price wasn't a factor and you could use anything, I would say use teak for any outside project you're gonna do. The problem is it's just super expensive. It's, actually, to be honest with you, off the top of my head, I don't know why it's so expensive. I'm assuming it's rare, a rare wood, that's why it's so expensive, but this is definitely an expensive wood. Like I said, it's a gold standard for bug and rot resistance, so if you can't afford it, it's a really good wood to use. I've seen it used, it's used in boats a lot. It's used for smaller applications like patio furniture, things like that. So that's a good choice. Next up on the list is Ipe. Ipe is also a very expensive wood. The most common application for it is decking, where I see it used. And actually, I considered it when I redid our decks. I ended up going with composite decking, but I did consider Ipe. It's known to be insect and rot resistant. It's a beautiful wood. All you need to do is apply a clear finish and it looks really good. It is on the more expensive side. I believe it comes from Africa and it needs to be shipped here, so that's why it's on the more expensive side. So there's that as well. Last up is don't forget about your composites. So if you're doing something like a deck or you're building patio furniture on a deck that you want to match to the deck, composites are a really good choice. The maintenance is super low key. But because of that, you're going to pay a high price out the gate. So I did our back deck with composites and it was very expensive, but I'm not going to have to do any maintenance on it for 10 years. So that's a positive there. Yeah, so those are some good outside wood options. I hope that helped you kind of consider what wood you want to pick for your outside project. If I had to recommend one personally, I would go with Sapele. It's absolutely beautiful. Put a clear finish on it, and I'm going to talk about the finish in a minute. And it looks beautiful for a long time, and it's rot resistance, bug resistance. It's a great wood to go with. So now we're going to get into how to finish your outside project so it lasts a long time. When you're doing this, there's certain things you want to think about that are unique to outside projects, and that is exposure to the elements. Obviously, you have wind, rain, dirt. The other thing to think about with outside projects is sun exposure. So this isn't one you would normally maybe pop into your head. It's not very intuitive, but UV light from the sun will fade woods very quickly, and you can apply a finish that's going to block UV rays and keep your project looking new, freshly sanded. It's not going to fade out as quickly. The other thing to think about is rapid temperature changes. So on the outside, you have to deal with the high temperatures of summer and the low temperatures of winter, and that causes rapid expansion, contraction of the wood. If you don't have a finish that can expand and contract with your wood, you're going to get cracking in the finish. It's going to chip. It's going to look generally terrible. So those three things you want to consider: elemental exposure, UV exposure from the sun, and then large temperature changes. All right, guys, so getting into the actual finish I use. So this is Spar Urethane, water-based. And this is made by a company called Urethane. I think Lowe's sells it. If you go to Home Depot, I believe they carry Minwax products, so that's it would be the same thing, Minwax, Spar Urethane. Honestly, I've not found a difference between Urethane and Minwax. I use the two interchangeably. I don't really care. But Spar Urethane is what you want to get as opposed to traditional polyurethane. Spar Urethane is what's made specifically for exterior projects. It gives you that extra protection against the elements, against UV sun exposure, and against rapid temperature changes. To take it a step further, I used water-based Spar Urethane. So you have two options when it comes to your polyurethane, water-based and oil-based. There's two important things to consider when deciding which one to use. Water-based dries to a crystal clear finish. If you're using a wood that you really like the characteristics and color of, you'd want to use water-based polyurethane because it's going to dry clear and it won't obscure the wood. If you're using oil-based polyurethane, it has a bit of a yellowish tinting to it when it dries, and it'll yellow even more over time. If you're using a wood that you want to add a little bit of color to, this is a good choice. So when I'm working with oak, for example, I tend to use oil-based polyurethane because it gives it a little bit of an amber in color, and I think it looks a little bit better. The other thing to think about is cleanup. So water-based products you clean up with water. You have an outside hose hooked up on your house. It's super easy cleanup, super fast cleanup, doesn't make a huge mess. Oil-based cleanup, you have to clean with mineral spirits, paint thinner. It's a lot harder to clean in my opinion. Ruin brushes a lot more. It's just, I think it's a headache compared to water-based finish. So I always go with water-based finish. Here's what I do when I finish my outside wood projects, and I'm gonna show some video clips about how I'm finishing this pergola. If you haven't already seen this video series on this pergola project, guys, there's 2 separate videos on how I created the address sign and then how I created the actual pergola. And it's in a playlist called House Sign Project. I'll put a link to that up here if you wanna check it out. But to finish this project, I'm gonna sand it with 80 grit, 120 grit, 180 grit, 220 grit, and 320 grit. And I'm gonna end with 320 grit. If you've seen past videos I've made, sometimes I sand up to 1500 grit, but since this is an outside project, it's not necessary to sand it down to such a high level. It's not gonna be, people aren't gonna be walking right up to it and looking at it. I'm less concerned about that. So I'll finish at 320 grit. All right, guys, if you stuck around to this point in the video, you get the bonus tip. So, so here's a bonus tip. Use epoxy to seal the legs and any end grain you have on your furniture. So a couple years back, I built a picnic table for our back deck, and on the legs, I used epoxy sealer to seal the legs. And the reason for that is wood is like a bundle of straws. The wood fibers are arranged in parallel along the length of the grain. And when you get to the end fiber, think of like a bundle of straws held together with an elastic band. That's what your end grain is. And it's where moisture and water really gets sucked up. It just goes into the ends of those straws. So you really want to seal that. Epoxy is, you know, it dries hard. It'll allow zero moisture penetration. So what you do in this example is, I'm showing you some images of the project that I did. I flipped over the table, used some blue painter's tape to create yourself a little barrier so you can pour the epoxy in. And then you want to pour the epoxy in just maybe 2-3 millimeters. It doesn't need to be very thick. Just thick enough to prevent water from being sucked up through the end grain of that wood. And this will add years to your project. I also want to let you know I'm putting this video in the Basic Woodworking Skills playlist, and I'm putting a link to that over here. If you're a beginner woodworker, you're looking to learn the trade, you want to learn some more basic woodworking skills, this is a great playlist to watch. It's packed full of good videos that talk about basic woodworking skills. Check it out.